In order to understand why we were created, why we were sent down to this earth, what is the purpose of our life, what is the best way to behave, to think, to interact with each other. We have the most amazing examples in our life, that of the Holy Prophet, peace upon him, and his holy progeny. His daughter Fatima, salamullah alayha, her husband Ali ibn Abi Talib, their grandsons Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein, who are known as the master of all youth in paradise, and the Prophet's granddaughter Sayyida Zainab salamullah alayha. Their entire lives are a set of examples for people like us to learn from, to practice our faith in the fullest form. To understand the human psyche, to look after our psychological well-being, and to lead fulfilling lives, we need to understand these holy personalities. In today's episode of Agahi, we have Sarah Gulamhusein, who has joined us all the way from Kenya, who is not only a psychologist but a cognitive behavioral therapist, a neuro-linguistic practitioner, and also the founder of Sazesh. Sarah Gulamhusein, welcome to the show.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam. How are you?
I'm good, alhamdulillah. How are you? Thank you for that introduction. It was really nice.
Thank you for joining us all the way from where you are right now. Today we're going to discuss a very important topic. Often we hear about, say, for example, personalities like Imam Ghazali or other thinkers and Mufassir and Sufi saints who have
Right.
written books on the human psyche, the nafs, the soul, the mind. But we never talk about the founders of psychology, I would say, the people who introduced human behavior and human psyche and the thoughts and processes to us. And they taught
Right.
thousands and thousands of people like Ali ibn Sina, Ar-Razi. So today, inshallah, Sarah, I want you to talk about psychology and psychological well-being, but from the perspective of these holy personalities. But before that, please introduce Sazish.
Right. Um, so Sazesh is a platform that I co-founded with my sisters. We co-founded it last year in April. It was an idea that I've had for quite a long time, because you're right, there is this kind of lack of understanding of what psychology and mental well-being is in our communities. The name itself, loads of people have asked me what it means, but the name itself is dedicated to my family, my mom and dad, and my family. And we had created it a long time ago, actually. And I thought that would be the perfect name for this, because even in Islam, family is the central or the most important part of your life, your identity, right? Um,
Okay, we're gonna
so,
go for a quick salah break and then we'll resume and we'll have the discussion, inshallah. So stay tuned.
sure, yeah, sounds good.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to Agahi. Today we're going to talk about the psychological well-being and how to look after our mental health through the teachings, narrations, and traditions of the holy Ahlulbayt alayhim salam. We'll welcome our guest Sarah Gulamhusein, who is going to give us an introduction about the um, founder of being founder of Sazish, and she'll talk about the work she has done so far. Yes, Sarah, welcome back.
Thank you for having me back. Yeah, so we were just talking about Sazesh and how it was founded. So I founded it last year, and it's basically a platform that raises awareness about mental health and human rights issues. It's We've done a lot of projects from last year since we started. Um, One of the first projects we did was mental well-being through the life of the Holy Prophet and his household. And we've got videos of that online. You can check it out even on our Instagram page at Sazish. And it's mainly just an awareness raising platform. And I thought that it's really important to raise that kind of awareness.
Definitely,
We have done
definitely.
a few other projects since then. So right now we're doing a children's rights awareness campaign. So yeah, loads of different ideas here and there.
So, Sarah, I would like you to introduce the concept of nafs or ilmul nafs as the holy household has described, because we see in history that we didn't really have a psychologist as such when you go back to Islamic history, but people used to
Right.
be like experts of holistic, fields like this human psyche, the human body, and everything else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so when it comes to the nafs, of course, in Islam, we know about the three different kinds of nafs: nafs ammar, nafs lawama, and nafs mutma'inna. And as you said, it wasn't really taught to us or disseminated as a psychological thing. But the moment you start learning psychology, one of the main theories that you learn about is the theory of the mind, which is that the mind is divided into the id, the ego, and the superego, which is the three main parts of your psychology.
Yeah.
And that is, I think it's really similar to the way that we've been taught about nafs, because you have one part of yourself that's more to do with trying to find your basic needs, like eating and drinking and the normal stuff. And then you have another part of yourself that's kind of, you'd say, filled with thoughts of wanting to seek pleasure, wanting to do things, being very adventurous and bold. And then you have the other part of yourself that's kind of the very noble and humble side of yourself. And that's
Mm.
where, your nafs it comes in and it tries to reason with you or rationalize with you.
Yeah.
So it's only when you start learning psychology that you realize this has been in Islam for such a long time. And so if
Yes.
this has
Yeah.
been in Islam, then what other parts of psychology have we been taught in Islam, but we just never realized it was to do with psychology or it was to do with mental health. Um,
Yeah.
for example, things like your personality and your character, that's been
Mm.
emphasized so much in Islam.
Yes.
Um, and it's it's a basic part of psychology as well. When you start growing up and you're
Definitely.
developing your personality, that's kind of similar, well, not kind of similar, but it is the same thing as developing your personality and character when you're growing up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, so it is a very integral part of Islam, and I think people often overlook it.
Talking about personality development and formation, we have, I think, numerous traditions in Islam where it is told how to bring up your children. In fact, they say that personality of the child, or the tarbiyat of the aulad, the parenting and the upbringing of the child, it
Yeah,
starts
yeah.
before conception. So, why is that?
I just attended a child development, not workshop, but like a seminar on it, like a few weeks ago. And this is the same thing that we were discussing over there, is that the personality and the character of the child, it doesn't start from the time they're born. It starts very
Yeah.
much earlier on, even before they're conceived, although conception
Yeah.
is an important process as well. But then it also very much depends on the parents and what their upbringing was like, because everything that they've grown up with, everything they've learned from their parents, they unknowingly or knowingly pass it down to their child. So it's kind of
Definitely.
like this
Yeah.
cycle of sharing things or kind of instilling things in the child, but that comes from your own life as a parent. So it
Yeah.
becomes very cyclical and very influential like that. So when you're thinking about a child's or a person's personality, it's not just their own personality or character you have to consider their parents, their upbringing, their culture, even what culture they've been brought up with, what education they've learned, and then also the background of the parents. And as a psychologist, when I get clients who come in like that, that's the thing I have to consider. What kind of
Yeah.
parental attachments do you have? How what's your relationship with your parents? What's your relationship with your grandparents? What are the family dynamics? Those are so very important when you're thinking about the character or the personality of a child. And quickly, I'll just make a kind of distinction between personality and character, because they're not the exact same thing. So when it comes to
Yeah.
personality traits, it's kind of um, your behavioral traits, or what you portray, your way of thinking and your behavior. But then character is much deeper than that. So character is to do with your belief system. It's what you
Yeah.
believe. And character traits don't always come out. I mean, if you're the kind of person who's very connected to your character, then yes, you will show it all the time, like how the Prophet was and Imam Ali and all of them. They
Mm.
always made sure that they showcase their character, right? Uh,
Yes. Yeah.
but for a person who's not very or unsure what their character is, or they're still building it, it's
Mm.
very much got to do with your it's very much got to do with your belief system and how you show that belief, and it comes out in specific set of circumstances. So there's a distinction between the two.
Yeah. Talking about the lives of the Holy Household, from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to our present Imam, everyone had a different, unique set of personality, and everybody
Right.
they spend their entire lives in practicing what they were preaching. So, and like I said, that if we didn't have these personalities in front of us, it would be very difficult to practice our own faith without any examples in front of us. So, what are the key elements from the lives of the Holy Household that we can look up to as examples and imply in our own lives?
You know, Marisa, that is such a big question.
We've got half
Because,
an hour, it's
like you
fine.
said, because, like you said, it's their entire way of life that we can embody. You know,
Hmm.
when I think about it, what information have they not given us? They've given us so much to
Yes,
rely on, so much to learn from. Um, if I had to think about key elements, then I would first pick on parental attachments, the relationship between the Holy Prophet and his daughter. I mean,
yes.
it's a universal example. You can use that for anything. The way he interacted with her, the way he loved her. He was never shy of showing his love for her, you know, and for
Hmm.
showing how his happiness for her and for encouraging her at every turn. Um, so that is a very important thing. And because we were talking about this earlier, the way that the Holy Prophet brought Bibi Fatima up, she kind of took that, all of those lessons and all of those experiences, and that helped her bring her children up, you know? So
Definitely.
that's how the
Yeah,
cycle, it moved towards that. And that kind of went
yeah.
on and on in the lives of the Ahlulbayt. So parental attachments definitely very important, very influential. Another thing that I would say is self-responsibility, and that's such a big
Mm.
word, but
Yeah,
especially if you look at the lives of Imam Ali and Imam Hussein, because they've been very verbal about that, about being responsible for yourself and your actions, and understanding what you control and what you don't control. Um, and then how arrogance and ego comes into that, and how you can, or anger, how that comes into it, and how
mm.
you can address those things, you know, because they're part
Yes,
of your fitra. You have a whole set of nafs that can sometimes get angry and sometimes get arrogant, and that's perfectly fine, but they've given us ways of dealing with it. You know, they've given us ways to cope with it.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so that's there. And then another one, which I think is really important, is tawakkul. Tawakkul, faith in Allah. You know, we say it so often, we learn about it. There's so many majalis said on it, but when you really get to the bottom of it, having faith, even if it's faith in yourself as a person, is so important. You know, it can grow to define you. And the Ahlul
Yeah,
Bayt has taught us that time and time again, everything that has happened in their life, good, bad, ugly, whatever it was, they connected it to Allah, and they were so grateful. They were so grateful for every single thing that came their way. That was the show of their faith, you know, that I believe, Allah, that you've given me this for a good reason. I believe that that is part of me. I can never not
yeah,
believe it, you know? And that brings about the kind of resilience or the kind of sabr that we're talking about, because even though they know, or we know, that we're not perfect human beings, if we have that faith and really, when it gets to it, when things get so bad and we understand, okay, there is a reason in this. I just can't
yeah,
understand what that reason is right now, but I have faith that there is a reason in it. That is enough for you to deal with it. You know, that's enough for you to
yes,
be resilient, to show the sabr. That's kind of, you think of it like a tank of energy or like a ball of energy. That's what that faith is. And you can draw from it so much. And it's never ending. It gives you enough energy to be resilient. It gives you enough energy to be patient.
And
Um,
I think
and
their
yeah,
lives, if you look at it, there are like thousands of examples where, in times of
oh yeah,
adversity, the Holy Household showed passion, like compassion towards their enemies, sabr and resilience. Like even the Holy Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, when people used to mistreat him, throw rocks at him, Baby Fatima used to look after him when he used to come back home.
oh
Clean
yes,
his wounds,
definitely,
and he never
yeah,
kind of retaliated back, or he didn't take vengeance, because he was mindful of the fact that he is rahmatul lil alameen. So regardless of what
yeah,
others do, we have to be in control of ourselves rather than be reactive instead of being
yeah.
patient.
That's a very interesting point because a lot of people think that they are not able to control their emotions or they're not able to control their life circumstances. And um, the key is to really get down to what you can and cannot control, right? Because
Mm,
you can't control life circumstances. You can't control if someone comes and humiliates you or if embarrasses you, or like the Prophet, he couldn't control anyone coming to throw rubbish on him, right? But
yeah,
what he
yeah,
could control were his responses. What he could control was the way he thinks, his way of thinking, his actions, right? He could control all of that, and that's what he did. And ultimately,
yeah,
it turned out that he ended up well, I'm not going to say winning because that's not the purpose of life, but he ended up on the better side of things, right?
yeah.
And I think that's really important that you said that, you need to be able to understand what we can and cannot control. And then the tawakkul comes in again, because once you understand you can't control something, you give it up to Allah and say, this, I'm leaving this in your hands. I'm only focusing on how I'm responding, right? I'm only focusing on how I'm
Yeah.
choosing to think.
And you mentioned anger and resentment and how we can control it, and as humans we experience it often. But we've got the example of
Mm.
Musa Kazim alayhi salam. He's known as Kazim because he had the beautiful power of controlling his anger despite all the oppression he endured in his life, and he's known as the most oppressed Imam
Mm.
as well.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
we talk about so many things, Sarah. I mean, time's not enough to cover all the aspects, but what about mindfulness itself? What does Islam say about that? I mean, it's fairly a new concept, but surely the Ahlul Bayt
Hmm.
alayhi salam, they have showed mindfulness through zikr and ibadah and salah and self-control through fasting. So if you would like to reflect on
Yeah,
that.
definitely. Um, so mindfulness, it is a fairly recent thing. It's very popular and it's very effective as well. As a therapist, I use mindfulness in my sessions as well, and it really helps. I mean, I see, even if I begin to doubt in the power of mindfulness, constantly every day I'm shown that it's such a powerful technique. And what it does is it just encourages you to live in the present moment. And if you think about Imam Ali's words, I think he has so many sayings on living in the present moment, appreciating the present
Yeah,
moment, Don't worry about yesterday, don't worry about tomorrow. What you need to worry about is how you are right now. And that's what mindfulness is. So it's very much a part of what the Ahlul Bayt has taught us to do. A really good tip that I usually give everybody is, it can be very difficult if you have a busy day. Right now we're in lockdown, so I don't know how busy
yeah,
everyone is, but things can be stressful. You've got family at home or you've got other responsibilities. Everyone's online the whole time. But if you can take just 5 minutes before your salah or after your salah to practice mindfulness, so go into a meditative state, and you can do whatever you want with it, because that's the power of mindfulness. You can personalize it to however you want, literally. You can think that today I'm going to reflect on my ears and I'm just going to be grateful about my ears. You can do that on one day. Another day, if something's really happened, you can decide, okay, I'm going to focus on how it got bad, and then I'm going to try and problem solve. So in your meditative state, you're focusing on problem solving, okay? Or you can just relax. You don't have to have your mind buzzing at all times. You can empty your mind of all thoughts and practice mindfulness in that way. And before and after Salah is actually the best time to do it, because then you'll notice better concentration in your Salah, and you'll notice that
That's
connection
good.
kind of becoming stronger. So that's a really good tip that I like to give everyone. And if you think about it, since we're talking about the Ahlulbayt, they used to do that as well. There are so many narrations of them taking so long in their salah, of them even when the Prophet used to go to Cave Hira, he used to go to meditate. Like he wasn't
Yes.
always getting revelations there. It wasn't like an
Yeah.
everyday thing. It was mostly a meditative state that he went into. And I think, maybe that's one of the earliest forms of meditation that we can take as an
Meditation,
example.
definitely. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think there's a famous story about associated with Amir al-Mu'mineen, that he had an arrow in his foot, and people were like, "We can't
Mm-hmm.
take it out. It's because he's going to experience a lot of pain." So someone suggested take it out when he's in the state of prayer, when he's doing salah, because when he's in that state, he's so focused that he wouldn't be mindful
Right.
of anything else around him, and they removed that arrow from his foot at that time. So you give a
MashaAllah.
really good
Yeah.
tip about concentrating in prayer to be in the present. In terms of
Yeah.
anxieties, worry, fear, as humans, that's natural. I mean, most of us, we worry about things.
Definitely.
We
Yeah.
fear things. What have we learned? What can we learn from the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam to manage our
Mm-hmm.
anxieties, our fears, our worries?
Um, Meditation is a good one. Mindfulness is known to help you come out of a panic attack or an anxiety state. Um, Another one I would say is gratitude. It's such a small thing. People tell me, why are you asking me to do a gratitude exercise? And I tell them, it's so important. It's actually the small things that are so, so important. And gratitude is one
Mm,
of them. Because even in your darkest times, even when you're despairing the most, there is always something you can be grateful for. Even if it's just my lungs. I'm grateful for my lungs that I can still breathe at this time, or I'm
yeah,
grateful for being alive, that Allah's still allowing me to live. He hasn't come and taken my soul from me. um so gratitude, just, again, so simple. 3 minutes every day or every night. What have I been grateful for today? And when you do it often enough, you'll actually realize that you have more positive things in your life than negative things, because positive is, most of the time, it outweighs the negative, right? So gratitude, I would say, is a really good. Uh, I think the
you
best
mentioned
example of
gratitude,
gratitude, yeah.
and I just remembered, one of the greatest treasures that we have is the Sahifa-e Kamila, the Zanz of Islam, which is a collection of
Yes,
supplications
yes.
from Imam Sajjad. And when you said gratitude, I just remembered that there are few supplications taught by Ali ibn al-Hussein. Um,
Hmm.
Supplication for well-being, supplication for when someone is experiencing distress, fear, and
Yes.
anxiety. And when you look at these supplications, it's supplication number 23 and his supplication in fear. One thing Imam
Hmm.
mentions is gratitude. He thanks Allah for everything that he's blessed
Okay.
with. And that makes you think, if someone is supplicating to Allah because they are fearful of something or worried or anxious about something, why is Imam
Hmm.
first thanking Allah for everything?
Yeah, yeah. It really is. The amount of treasures that we've gotten from the Ahlul Bayt, it really does boggle your mind, but it shows you the importance of gratitude. It really does, because even in the darkest times, you always have something to be grateful for.
Yeah.
And you find that when you practice it yourself every day, you find it. Another good example of gratitude is Imam Hussein alayhi salam. I mean, he knew from a young age what life he was going to have. The Holy Prophet
Yes.
knew, his parents knew, and yet he
Yes.
always found something to be grateful for. He exhibited so much patience, resilience, and gratitude. And I think that is also important for when you're in that situation, when you feel like, um, not just anxious, but when you feel fearful, when you have that strong fear inside of you, you know. And then one more thing that I would definitely recommend is reflection. And this is like mentioned in the Quran so many times, you know, for Allah gives so many parables, and then He says, this is for people who reflect or for people who
Mm.
ponder, right?
Yeah.
And reflection and pondering is, it can really help you. You know why? Because it takes you to a state of mind where now you're trying to understand where your anxiety is coming from. Now you're trying to rationalize it. And once you start rationalizing it, you can move into a state where you not only are understanding yourself better and what is affecting you, but you're also trying to problem solve. You're trying to understand, how can I then change my thoughts or my behaviors or my responses, the things I control, to not get anxious, you know? And that's where CBT comes from, actually.
I'm just
So
gonna take a call. There's a caller on the line. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam, sister. Uh, Ahlulbayt, they are the one who are the most truthful people on the face of the earth.
No doubt.
They never cared about anything. The Karbala's incident is in front of you. That Imam Hussein, when there was enemies around him, what was the situation with all his kids and everybody? It's in front of you, but he never said lied about anything or to save himself. He didn't pretend or say anything wrong. He said in this situation he spoke truth. Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam, when people asked him that how you broke the idols, and he put his axe on the biggest idol and left where they were worshipping the idols. He left Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam. When they asked Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam that who broke all these idols, and he said that go ask the biggest idol that if he can speak, and if he can't even speak and he can't even tell you the who broke these idols, then it means that why you worship somebody who can't even speak, who can't even give you response. And in Shia teaching, they say that a Quran tells you that you can tell lies. Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam didn't tell lie. He said, go ask the idol. He can give you answer. The who broke these idols. If he can't give you answer, then why you worship the idol? So how you interpret Quran and Prophet, the most truthful people on the face of earth, and you say, oh, they were telling lies,
Sister,
and
do
the
you
book is telling lies, and you if your base is on the on lying, and lying is permissible in your religion,
No, that's
then
not the case. I don't think.
what type of religion you are presenting?
Sorry, sister. I think you've got the wrong impression. We are talking about human psychology here from the lives of the Holy Prophet and his holy progeny. Quranic interpretation is a different subject, and you'll have to contact someone who is an expert in the tafsir of Quran. Thank you for your call. Yes, so Sarah, before the call,
I
you
do
were
think she has, sorry, I do think she has an important point though. I think what we don't often realize is that there's a lot more to psychology than just what we learn in madrasa or what we learn from
true.
majalis. Um,
Yeah,
the example she gave of Prophet Ibrahim, instead of replying confrontationally that I did it, because that would be something rude to do, he kind
yeah,
of urged them to think logically. He urged them to
yeah.
rationalize and say, if you say that your idol knows everything and you know you worship him, so try and ask him, does he have an answer? You know? So he was trying to urge them to use their reasoning or rationalizing ability, to use that their nafs and mutmainna, and to see if they were able to do that. But of course, they weren't able to do that. They got affronted, rather, and they responded to it in a very negative way.
This is the beauty of the personalities of all the Anbiya of Allah, all the prophets that Allah sent down, and all the Imams that Allah sent down. Because as humans, we wanted a role model. We wanted a human being who is experiencing sorrow and grief and pain, and still having that yaqeen, like you mentioned, that tawakkul is the most important thing to
Yes,
go through
for sure.
trials and tribulations in life. Sarah, we only have 7 minutes left. So if you could talk something about what coping strategies we have learned through the lives of the Prophet ﷺ and his holy progeny
Right. Yeah, of
when
course.
we go through trials
So
in
I
our
think,
life.
yeah, we have talked about quite a few over here. We talked about gratitude. We talked about mindfulness. These are important coping strategies. Um, when it comes to resilience and patience, see, everyone has a very different idea of resilience, of what it is, a different idea of patience. It is a very good coping mechanism, I would say, very good, but then it depends how you approach it. Okay, some people can think that being just suffering in silence is good enough, right? And Allah will
Hmm.
accept me and my amals and everything. And inshallah, of course, inshallah, He will reward you for your what you're going through and your sabr. But then on the other hand, you also have to think about what kind of suffering are you going through? What's the context of the situation? Are you being tested by Allah? Do you know that this is a test and you're trying to improve and become better? Or is someone taking your haqq away? Is someone taking your rights away? Because the moment your rights are starting to be like abused or being taken away, then it's your responsibility to stand up. And I was just listening to a podcast the other day which said that sure, the lady who was talking, she said, sure, Quran can help you, namaz can help you, all these amals that we have, they can help you, they definitely can, but that doesn't mean you have to stay in that situation where your rights are being taken away. That doesn't mean you have to just you know pre- pretend like you've given up, right? You still have to try
Yeah.
and get out of that situation. Still have to try and assert your rights in a very humane way, in a very religious way, and assert those rights. And at the same time, do all of these Islamic coping mechanisms that we have, and the different ways that Islam has given us the du'as and all of those amals and everything. They're very, very important as well. So that is more of resilience, I would say.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
so and persevering. So even though you are persevering, even though you are in that situation, you're still trying to get out of it. You're still trying to find a solution, right? Or trying
Hmm.
to assert your rights and make sure that you're not being taken advantage of. Um, Another important coping mechanism, and I think a lot of people see this as weakness, but another important coping mechanism is letting your emotions out. Because as human
Yeah.
beings, we always have emotions. You're always going to feel happy, sad, angry. These emotions, they're going to come and go. They're part of our fitrah, okay?
And that
But
reminds me of
yeah,
Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam, who got the title of
yeah, that's
Zainul
right.
Abidin because he used to do long prostrations. And after the
Yes,
event of Karbala, he cried so much. I think for 40 years he cried. Every time he saw water, he cried, which just shows that it's okay to grieve. It's okay to
it
cry.
is. Yeah,
And that's
it
also sabr
definitely is.
because I think it was her prophet, one of the prophets who cried so much after losing his son, Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam, that he lost his
Prophet,
eyesight.
Prophet
And
Yaqub.
Allah called
Yes,
him
yes.
as one of the most patient ones.
Definitely. And so a lot of people see that as weakness, crying, but actually it's not a
Yeah.
weakness. It's just your way of taking that emotion out. And actually, I would say crying is much healthy, even when you're angry or when you're frustrated. It's better to cry than to actually
Yeah.
hurt yourself or, lash out in anger at someone else. I mean,
Mhm.
we've been given tear glands for a reason, So use them. Use your tear glands in a really healthy way.
Yeah.
So
In
yeah.
terms of managing depression, sadness, grief, are there any tips
Mhm.
that the Ahlulbayt alayhi salam have given, like to wear certain clothes or gemstones or have a certain diet, for example?
Yeah, for sure. you know, I think we were talking about this earlier as well. But wearing black all the time. I know everyone likes wearing black. I'm wearing a bit of black as well right now, but wearing black all the time is the color is kind of associated with grief and depression,
Yeah,
because whenever we lose someone, you know, we're urged to wear black, and that's just because of the energy of the color. The energy of the color is very subtle. It's not very heavy. I mean, well, it can be heavy, but the energy associated with that is kind of low, if you get what I'm trying to say. So
yeah,
wearing
yeah,
black, I think, is don't make it a daily habit.
yeah.
There are certain gemstones as well that can help regulate our emotions. They can
Manage
help you. I
anxiety.
think, yeah. I'm not sure
I
which one,
think,
Enrico Firoza.
yeah,
One of them is for
yeah.
anxiety.
Aqiq is something which
Yeah,
every single prophet of Allah wore in their right hand.
yeah,
And it's one of the stones that
definitely.
helps with anxiety and illuminate sadness. And I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
Durre
And that's
Najaf is the
actually,
one that, yeah, Imam Ali alayhi salam
yeah,
said,
that is true.
looking at Durre Najaf brings joy to the hearts of
Yeah,
mu'mineen. This just shows
definitely,
Allah didn't create
definitely.
anything in vain. Even stones that Allah created has some benefit for
Yes,
us.
everything has a purpose for sure. Even another thing, and this I was taught by my madrasa teacher, and it just stuck with me. When you've washed your hands and you wipe it on your clothes, okay? And I didn't understand why it's not good to wipe your wet hands on your clothes. But when you really learn more about Islam and the way everything's connected to energy, you realize, well, that's because you've washed your hands and you have that energy that needs to be purified. And then when you wipe it on your clothes, it stays with you the whole day. And these are
Hmm.
some of the similar energies that you're thinking about when you do wudu. You know, the reason we have to do it 3 times is just because you are cleansing that particular energy. That's why it says that wudu and ghusl is like a spiritual cleansing. And that's
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it's got everything to do with energy. And some people don't believe me when I say that, but this is what Islam teaches us. You know, Islam is it's a way of life. Everything is governed by energy. So you're right, nothing has been created in vain, not even the energy that surrounds us.
Inshallah, we'll continue this topic further, Sarah, because we still have
I
so
hope so.
much to
I
go
hope
over
so.
and we have run out of time.
Yeah.
So, inshallah,
Yeah.
next time. Thank you so much
Yes.
for joining us today and sharing the valuable
Thank you for
information
having
that you
me.
did.
Yes. Thank you so
Jazakumullah
much,
khairan.
Marisa. All right.
Inshallah,
Assalamu
next week, walaikum assalam. Inshallah, next week, we'll join you with another episode of Agahi with a new topic and another amazing guest. And we'll discuss mental health because mental health is important. Take care of your mental health and each other. Inshallah, we'll see you next Saturday. Assalamu alaikum.